I spent 6 years writing my first feature, produced it for next to no money when I was 25, and won at the oldest independent film festival in the world. In this podcast, I'm going to walk you through my thoughts on and strategies for screenwriting, including how you can improve your own workflow and what pitfalls you can avoid thanks to my own trials and errors. So if you are a filmmaker or screenwriter yourself, or are just interested in how feature films get written, this podcast is for you. I hope you enjoy. Welcome everybody, I hope you're doing well today. It is September 26th at 5:03 p.m. I am coming at you from my office window in New Jersey. This is episode 1 of a podcast that I will be doing probably, maybe weekly, maybe bi-weekly. We'll have to see. It's a bit of an experiment, but I am a filmmaker, and as you can see on my YouTube banner, I like to brand myself as I make films without rich parents. Essentially meaning that, there's a lot of independent filmmaking spaces on the internet. There's a lot of independent filmmaking podcasts, a lot of independent filmmaking YouTube channels and Twitter accounts and TikTok accounts and Reddit accounts and people doing AMAs. And that's all great. And there's a lot of valuable information to be had in all of them, no matter who's making it. It's always great to hear what other people are doing and how they're doing it to inspire yourself. My personal problem that I encounter a lot of the time, though, is that a lot of these podcasts and channels, a lot of people giving advice are not in the same space as I am. And what I mean by that is we're all independent filmmakers at the core of it, but there's many different tiers inside independent filmmaking. And there are those who make films without help from the system, but they're able to easily obtain funds in other ways, whether that be, grants or just very, very tactical fundraising. Maybe they're still able to get independent producers on board, or maybe they have the rich family, right? Or just have money themselves. And obviously no shame to any of those people. If you have the money and the resources, then go big. And make your art. And there's a lot of times when even with substantial money, like that is not the only obstacle in filmmaking. It's not like if you have the money, there are no problems. So definitely no shade or anything towards those people. All I mean to say is that is not my situation. And so it is hard for me to take advice from those people because a lot of the advice that they give it's just not relevant to my circumstances currently. Even people who talk in hindsight about the days when they did have legitimately no budgets, and were in circumstances more similar to mine. It is in hindsight, and it's not, usually it's not like last year. It's usually like, 5-10 years ago when I started making films. And that landscape is just drastically different than it is now because it is so ever evolving. And so I wanted to make something that talk to those filmmakers who genuinely have no resources. And I want to talk about how I had no resources. I had no rich family. I had no friends in the industry. And I was able to make a feature film with no sacrifices to the script I had written. And I did not write it to be filmable. How that film was then able to win at World Fest Houston, which is the oldest independent film festival in the world. It includes alumni such as Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, the Coen brothers, Ridley Scott. In the independent space, it is a fairly well-known and prestigious festival, especially historically. And how I was able to even get a distribution offer the day that we had our first early screening. So I want to talk about all of that. keeping in mind the entire time that if I was able to do any of this, you will be able to do it too. Because it's as scrappy as you could really get. And it worked. And the film, I'm excited to be able to share it with everybody. It has not been distributed yet. We are in the process of trying to make that happen, and we are hoping that we can have it on streaming in 2026. So, with that all being said, I want this episode, as this will be a series of episodes, I want to focus in this one on idea generation and how you know when a script is the right script to pursue and how to build on and actually execute on that script. How do you actually write a film? Where do these ideas come from for films? Have you ever seen a film? This happens a lot with like horror films, and it's like an idea so bizarre, and it's like take like the Terrifier films for example, that just go into such insane, gory, and horrific places, and it's like, who thought of this? Like, where did this idea come from? Human Centipede, I watched that. That was probably the first time I had felt genuinely disturbed. I was like, I don't feel disturbed because of what I'm seeing. I feel disturbed because somebody thought of this. You know, ideas are funny things. So I want to start talking about that, and then we'll get into more about outlining and actually writing a feature film. My film is called Gingerbread Kids. It is, I believe the script was like 100 and, I should know this off the top of my head, 110 pages or like 114 pages or something like that. So it's not like a 70-page, feature. It was as ambitious as you could get, with a feature. It was pushing that length. And what my film is about is the foster care system in the United States, and to expand on that, the failed foster care system in the United States. It is about a brother and sister who are in foster care after the death of their parents, and the brother ages out at 18. The little sister is left behind in an abusive foster home, and the brother, not being able to protect her anymore, breaks her out in the middle of the night, and they go on a run, trying not to get caught and doing whatever they can to stay together, but not being prepared for life on the outside, not having a place to live, not having money, not having, any reliable contacts or anything like that. They find themselves in predicaments and situations where they have to survive. And there are mental obstacles, there are financial obstacles, everything under the sun. So that idea, where did it come from? Now, I was not a foster child. I don't know anybody. Well, now I do after making the film, but while I was writing the film, I did not know anybody who had experience with the foster care system. And I actually didn't even have any inclination myself of what the system was like. I didn't carry around this knowledge about how broken the system was in the United States. But it was originally just kind of a small part of a different story. And so to really share how this idea came to be, the first tip or piece of advice I would have is that you have to be looking for inspiration everywhere. If you're having trouble generating ideas, everywhere that I go, every place I am and every person that I interact with and everything I see, I'm thinking of them in terms of, locations, in terms of plot points, in terms of characters. And I'm always looking and taking in things and thinking like, how could this be an interesting story, right? Because you never know where inspiration will strike. And it was, I believe in 2017 or 2018. And I went to a gun violence awareness march with my mom in New York City. And on the way back, we took the bus in, and so we took the bus back home. And on the way back, the bus driver had an attitude. It was just one of those people. He had enough. And the older I get, and the more that I go through my day-to-day job, my day-to-day just life in society, enduring it all, the more I see where that man was coming from. But still, he was being openly rude towards the what do you call them? The passengers. And so, me, I'm a big ball of anger. I really am. And I just had the thought, like, not that I wanted to do it, but that, you know, I more so had the thought, like, some people deserve to just get a good smack. Some people deserve to get a good punch to the face. Um, me, I'm not punching anybody. I would break my own hand, and the person would hardly know what happened. But I just had this anger towards his attitude. And it made me think, like above the bus driver, they always have that sign, and it's like, assaulting a bus driver is punishable by law, and it comes with this fine, this amount of jail time, whatever. But it got me thinking, aside from legal consequences, like, what would actually legitimately happen if somebody were to attack a bus driver? And it got me thinking, what if that bus was then to crash? And, what if the person who attacked him had anger issues and that caused the bus to crash? Let's say somebody got hurt because of it. What type of guilt would that person feel who caused that to happen? And it just snowballed into a place where I thought, okay, what if the bus crashed? What if somebody got hurt? And what if it was somebody that person, felt a need to protect, and that wound up in the place of being like a little sibling, like a little sister. And I was thinking, well, why would a kid and a little sister be on a bus in the first place alone? They're probably escaping something. Where are they escaping? And it wound up, I wound up playing with the idea of maybe they're escaping foster care. Maybe their parents died, and that's why this kid has anger issues. And what would happen if their parents died? They would be in foster care, and maybe they were trying to escape. So, from there I had to figure out, okay, well, why would they be escaping foster care? And that's when I started my research into foster care, because I didn't know anything about it. And if I was going to write a script where that was at least a part of the catalyst, I would have to know a little bit about it. So, I started to explore that, and when I found all the horrors about like how broken the system actually is in the United States. I mean, I don't have nearly enough time in this episode to go into all of that, but if you do some light research, even, you will find some pretty horrifying statistics. And that led me to realize, like, I've always liked making films about like social issues. I try not to, like, I don't like a preachy film, because it just feels, it's too much. It's too in your face, right? But I've always tried to make films that, have a reason for existing. Like, I can't give myself like permission to make something if I don't know why I'm making it. And at least that's how I was. I'm kind of a little bit past that now. I've written some things that I can't quite justify, like what it's doing in the history of cinema. Like, what is its purpose? But I just know it's a good idea. The script came out good, and I would like to watch it, and I know other people would like to watch it, and that's why I'm making it, because it's a good movie that people will like. I've kind of gotten more to that point. But at the time I started writing this, like I said in the intro, 6 years before we went into production. So by the time we entered production, it was probably more like 7 even. So spending 6 to 7 years writing it, at that time, I was very much in that mindset of, I want to make meaningful art. And I still do. I just try not to imprison myself in that, square box. Because that's where you really stifle your own creativity. Imagine a film, a great film idea, one of the best scripts to ever be written, wasn't written because you or somebody else didn't think that, it was contributing enough to society. I mean, at the end of the day, let's just make cool stuff, right? But, I do like to have a purpose behind what I make. And once I heard about all of these statistics, once I really saw how broken the system was, that made me realize, like, okay, I want the film to be about this. Like, this is what I want the whole thing to be. And, the log line now is when a mentally troubled teen breaks his little sister out of an abusive foster home, the two embark on a run from the law and do whatever it takes to stay together. And I would never have come up with that idea, with this premise, if I didn't allow myself to explore that small seed of the bus driver. So in the final film, there's no bus or bus driver, bus crash, but the kid does have anger issues. The kid is entrusted with the care of his little sister. They are running from something. Like, all those kind of bones are there. And it just was packaged in a completely different body. That I never would have just thought of that idea without thinking first about a much different idea, and just allowing myself, giving myself the permission to see something through. And that's really, I think, like, the most important thing when you're writing is, like, when you think of an idea and immediately you're like, oh, no, that's stupid. It's like, well, I don't know, maybe it is, right? But that's just one idea. And a lot of times, look at any of the greatest films that have ever been made, and I guarantee you, in a lot of cases, what wound up being on screen is not what they initially sat down to write, because things naturally evolve. You don't know every beat point. You don't know every character when you sit down to write something. But as you develop and flush out those specifics, then it requires you to go back and change a few other things, to make everything gel together. So don't shoot down an original idea. If you think it's dumb, then I encourage you to say, why is it dumb? Pinpoint that and see, like, okay, well, maybe this one portion of this doesn't work. But then maybe if I change that, maybe the rest will work. Like, if it was something interesting enough to you in the first place to think about it, there's probably something there. You didn't just think of a completely dumb idea, most of the time at least, right? Like, you thought of it because there was something about it that interested you. It's just, as a whole, maybe you don't think it'll work. So then change some of the pieces of it, right? And once you have that initial idea, it's still, you never have to feel like you have to make something, right? And a lot of times, like, I've had an idea and I've sat down to try to write it, and I hit a wall, and it doesn't so much feel like a wall like writer's block. It feels more like I hit a wall in terms of the potential that this story can have. I just don't see any way for any path forward for those characters, for that, concept. And then I'll abandon it. I'm not going to kill myself and slave away trying to make something work that isn't really meant to. And that usually happens during the outline process. So I want to get into that a little bit now. So there are no rules to outlining. I'll say the only time that you really have to pay attention to, like, any industry type of formatting is if you are going to be trying to pitch an outline to somebody to try to get them to write the full script. Maybe you have an idea and you kind of build this outline, but you don't want to be the one to actually write it. You just want to pass it off to someone and say, can you write a script based on this? And then we'll go into production and all that. If you want to do that, if you're trying to use outline as a pitching material, then it's important then to follow industry specific formatting, industry standard formatting, so that people take you seriously, and so that people know what you're actually trying to say. But a lot of times, like, if you're going to actually be writing the script and you're not, like, writing with somebody who needs to also understand what your outline is, like, if it's just you, just outline it however works for you. I mean, there are technically industry ways, like standard ways of doing it, but I really wouldn't worry about it if you're just going to be writing the script yourself. There are plenty of industry standard formatting rules that will apply to the script itself when you're writing it. In the outline stage, I really wouldn't get bogged down by any of it. There's just no reason to. It just complicates it. It makes it more stressful and overwhelming. And just, why would you do that to yourself? This is all stressful enough. Don't make anyone ever, you know, make you feel like you have to do something one way. Like, film is an art. Art is supposed to be subjective. Art is supposed to be, people have different styles. You don't tell one painter that you're not allowed to paint like that, because it's not how these other 5 painters paint. Like, every painting looks different. And the methods to get there are different by the person. Film is no different. So when you're outlining, it really is whatever helps you. All I can really talk about is what helps me. But again, like, this is not me telling you that this is how you should do it even. It's just what helps me, and you can take it or leave it as you wish. I do use the classic beat sheet from Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. And I use it for a few reasons. So one, I did go to film school. Probably we'll have a whole episode about that at some point and whether or not it's worth it. But when I was there, they teach you Save the Cat. They go through the beat sheet. It's what you learn. But I genuinely found it to be helpful. And so I made the conscious decision. I chose to continue using it, past that class, past college as a whole. And it's really become a guiding light for me in developing my scripts. So a lot of times, like, if you just think of like a wide open space, a big blank white room, and you have to fill it with ideas, and you have ideas, but where do you put them? How do you feng shui those ideas in a blank room? Do you put this idea all the way in the back? Do you put it in by the front? You put it kind of in the middle to the side against the wall? Is this like less important? And is this a C story that I'm going to put in the back corner? Or is it more of an A story that I'm going to put in the front? Like, how do you determine all of that and where things go? I mean, a script is like a puzzle, right? So how do you determine where all these pieces are going to go? Sometimes it might just come to you, but other times a beat sheet can be really helpful for that. Because it gives you a sense of what type of event should be happening at certain points throughout the film. And so off the top of my head, the beat sheet, it starts with the opening image, goes into the setup, the theme stated, the catalyst, the debate, the break into two, the promise of the premise, the midpoint, the bad guys close in, the all is lost, the dark night of the soul, the break into three, the finale, and the closing image. And all of those obviously have purposes behind them. So the catalyst, for example, which generally happens around page like 15 to 20. It depends on the total length of your script. But you usually spend the first like 5 to 10 minutes of a film just establishing the status quo, finding out maybe what this person, what your protagonist wants. What is their want? That is a very important thing to know. Like, what is their goal? What are they out to do? Well, once you kind of pinpoint, like, the catalyst is like the thing that changes that status quo. So, like, you open the film, this is what the everyday life and world is like. This is what this person might be missing from their life, or whatever the situation is for your specific story. And there's usually a thing, that changes all of that. Let's say, let's take my film, for example. So we open, and these two kids are already in foster care in an abusive home. And what they want is to stay together. So the catalyst is going to in some way disrupt that, and it's going to change that status quo. So the catalyst in my film is the brother aging out of the system. That is the thing that comes in and flips things upside down. You'll then spend the rest of Act 1 trying to figure out ways that you could go about tackling your issue. So, like, the debate is, what do we do about this? It is the kid trying to get a job, trying to get an apartment so he can get custody of his sister. It is kind of, and then not all of that not being successful leads him to this ultimate decision of, what am I going to do? And then the break into two happens, and that is what catapults you. That is that action that catapults you into the rest of the film. So that, in my film, is the brother breaking his sister out of foster care. So on the opening image, we open on, and the opening image is just kind of reflective of the tone of the film and mine. We open on like a backwards American flag flying above a school, which is where they were first, I'll say, abducted intentionally, and brought to foster care. So you open with that image, a strong visual. The setup is learning what happened to these kids and seeing the life that they're currently living. And the catalyst is that now he is separated from her and he's trying to make it work, but he can't. And he's intent on saving his sister from this abuse, and he breaks her out. And that's all act one, figuring out where you are, something gets in the way, trying to fix it, and ultimately making an action, a definitive decision towards accomplishing that goal that's going to propel you now into what the film is really about, which is them trying to stick together despite not being prepared for this world. And so, when you have ideas like, okay, they're going to be in foster care, the brother's going to age out of the system, he's going to break her out of foster care. Well, that could be the ending of the film just as easily as it's the catalyst. It ends with him breaking her out, and you don't know what happens after that, or something goes wrong, and whatever. It could also be that could have been the catalyst, or that could have been how the film opened, right? And I did play around with different placements. And this is why the beat sheet was so helpful to me, because I was able to say, okay, well, if we open with them breaking out, right? Now what's the catalyst? Because him breaking her out, that's kind of establishing this as the status quo of this is what's happening, but something has to now turn this on its head. And so for something, unless it's one of the, I don't like doing this, if it's like showing you something that happens later, and then it like, the opening is like what happens at the midpoint, and then like after 5 minutes it says like 2 months earlier, and now you go back in time. I hate that. I really do. Just put me in a situation, show me what the world is, just tell me a linear story. That's what I prefer. There's times when it works the other way. It's just never been my my intuition. It's never been my cup of tea. So you have to kind of think of where these puzzle pieces are going to go. And, when I put that as the opening, now it's like, well, what's the catalyst? So if this is the status quo, if we're being introduced to the normalcy of this world being that they broke out, then the catalyst would be like, they got found or something, and then maybe they got caught, and now they have to figure out what they're going to do, and then the break into two is them escaping custody or something, right? But that's changing the bones of the story at that point. I wasn't interested in doing it that way. I wasn't interested in them being, caught and escaping, police custody, or, escaping the house twice, or like what any of those kind of the roads that would bring you down. I just wasn't interested in. And so the beat sheet is helpful because I knew in my head that the status quo was them being in foster care, and that, the catalyst, would be that they're separated. And then the break into two is her breaking her out. And the beat sheet is what helped me put all those points into place. And then from there, it's a lot easier to fill the gaps in between. And so, I'm not going to go into kind of the entire beat sheet, at least not in this episode. But for me, they're very helpful. And, I just recently, like maybe 2 months ago or so, I wrote a new feature film, and I outlined it. I actually outlined it and wrote then the full script in like 2 to 3 weeks. It was a super quick process. Like I said, Gingerbread Kids took me 6 or 7 years. But so like, sometimes it moves quicker than others, but a very helpful tool, like something that helped me write that film. I did use a beat sheet still. And one of the questions to ask yourself is what could happen next? It's a classic, like the video with the South Park writers, right? You write a sequence of events, and if you can fill the words in with like this happens and then this happens, then you have a pretty bland story. It has to be like this happens, therefore this happens, or this happens, like it shouldn't exactly just make total sense of like this happens and then this happens and then this happens, right? So like just think like what could happen next and think about all those possibilities, and it opens a lot of doors for you when you're trying to develop that beat sheet, kind of doing two things at once. So what I do, I take my initial ideas and I put them in a beat sheet. I say, these are all the scenes I have in my head. I want him breaking her out. I want him getting kicked out. I want this to happen. I want that to happen. I look at the beat sheet. I say, okay, it feels like this would go here. It feels like this would go here. And then I ask, what could happen after this or before this? What would bring us to each of these moments? And that's how I try to fill in the gaps. And then you'll very quickly see what gaps you have that are hard to fill in. You know, you'll have a big gap and you're like, man, I don't know. There's like 2 scenes that could happen in between these 2 things. I can't fill like 10 minutes of screen time that I would need to fill. And that might clue you in that maybe what you thought was a beat isn't really a beat. Maybe that just happens earlier, and then and then explore what will happen after that. And maybe you'll figure out, oh, this big event could happen next, and then that's actually what that next beat point is going to be. So for me, it's very helpful. And then from there, I kind of just put each scene on a page and I elaborate. I'll write like a paragraph for each one. In a beat sheet, I'm just writing the general idea of a scene. For Break Into Two, Gabe breaks Sam out of the foster home. But in the outline, I'm going to actually say it's basically writing that part of the script minus the dialogue. And you don't like format it like a script. You're just kind of writing like specific action and kind of like how the scene starts, what happens in the middle, and then how it's going to end up. And it's kind of like a summary of what that scene is going to be. And I do that for the whole thing until I have every scene outlined like that. And I have every scene written as like a summary, to summarize like one paragraph in order. And during this process, like always remember that you can trim later. So you don't have to, you don't have to edit yourself as you go. Like if you have an idea, get it on the page. There's nothing worse than forgetting a good idea. And you don't know sometimes what ideas will wind up being good and which won't. So just write everything down. You can always trim later. You're not committing to anything right now. You're just putting an outline down and seeing what works. And if you have something that you really don't think will work, but you like it, imagine if you just said, oh, but I like it, but it won't work. And then you just forget it. But imagine if you were like, well, let me just put it in for now, and then it winds up working really, really well, and then you could have missed out on a really great idea because you edited it before you even allowed yourself to see if it would be a good idea or not. So don't get stuck in that trap of like editing as you go. Just get everything on the page. And, just in general, if at this point you're feeling like, I don't feel like this can really go anywhere, then you can stop. It's fine. But if you see promise and you're like feeling it and you're like, no, I feel this building to something, then pursue it. I mean, just follow your gut. You never have to feel obligated to continue writing something, but if you feel like you should, then listen to your gut. And this is often referred to as the muse, right? Listen to your muse. So what is that? What is your muse? So your muse is your inner creative voice. It is that thing when you're writing where you feel really excited about a particular idea, where you feel like this idea doesn't work or this idea really does work. It's that guiding voice. It's your instincts, your creative gut instincts. And your muse can come calling at any time. Sometimes you'll be out, maybe you're at school, maybe you're at work, maybe you're driving to your friend's house, maybe you're out at dinner, wherever you are. And you'll just have this inspiration strike. You'll just have this idea. And it's like, ooh, I like that. And what I always do, you gotta write it down immediately, man. You gotta find a way to make it happen. So how many years ago is this now? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago or something. I had a job at a Geek Squad at Best Buy. I also during, this is a long time ago, like high school days, I had a job at Staples. And I always, even back then, before I was actually making films happen, I would always kind of like explore ideas and write them down and whatnot. And I had been at work in the past and had an idea strike, and I've been in the middle of work. And I remember like printing out, God, I didn't have pen or paper, right? I remember printing out a blank receipt paper from the cash register at Best Buy. I would print out a little scroll of receipt paper, track down a pen, and I would write my ideas on the receipt paper. And then throughout the day, as I had new ideas, I would add it on to the list. I'd print out more paper, and like, even if you're in the middle of something, you got to be a little bit selfish. Write it down somehow. Like, if it, at least type it into your phone. At least do a voice note on your phone. Text yourself or email yourself a voice note. Where you can be, oh, yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom really quick. You're in the bathroom, just type it out or do a quick voice note just so that you don't forget. Because that's your muse calling. That's your muse saying, hey, this is a really good idea. You gotta pick up the phone when they call, when the muse calls, you pick up, you don't ignore it. So sometimes then you'll also try to call the muse yourself, and roles will be reversed. Sometimes you'll sit down, you'll be like, okay, I'm not feeling particularly inspired right now, but I want the script to be done in 2 weeks, and I know I need to sit down and write this many pages if I'm going to stay on track. And then you'll try to force it, and you'll try to call that muse, and you'll be like, hey, listen, I'm trying to get this work done, trying to get ideas. And sometimes it's just not your time. If the muse doesn't answer, then call again later or tomorrow. I never think it's productive to like force something out. Like, I'll say that like a lot of times I haven't felt like writing, and I'll sit down and wind up writing more than I ever have. And it's like material that I'm in love with. And that's great. So always try, for sure. Even if you don't feel like it, you have to try every day. But if you sit down and then you spend like a half hour, an hour, and nothing's happening, you have no ideas and you're just not feeling it, then that's fine. Just walk away. No good idea, no good writing is going to be done in a time like that when you were not feeling creative, So try every day. And if some days it's just not your day, it's not your day. I would always recommend like walking away, coming back later that day. Or if it's at night or something and where you just don't have time later, then come back tomorrow. I mean, don't beat yourself up over it, Like I said, this is all stressful enough. Don't make it more stressful than it has to be. But that's what I would recommend, in that way. When you feel creatively inspired, jump on it no matter where you are. And if you sit down and inspiration just doesn't hit, then tell yourself that that's okay. So, always give it an effort though, right? And that ties into the idea of discipline. And discipline is one of the most important things that you need to have in check as when filmmaking, especially when script writing. Because if a producer didn't, if you were not hired to write a script, and most people probably that are listening to this podcast, right, are in my boat, which is like, we're not being hired to write something. We didn't approach a producer with an idea. We didn't pitch something and then he said, okay, go write it, and here's your deadline. That will all happen in due time. But at this point in my career, and probably most people's careers listening to this, we're at the point where it is up to us. We write the film, we make it on our time, and then we try to sell it. And then once we sell it, we hope that leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? But in the beginning, you have to hold yourself accountable. And so you have, it's so easy in that way to say, I'm not going to write today. And if that means that the script gets done a month later, then who cares? Because nobody told you it had to be done next month. That was you who said that, But this can start this cycle. It's so easy to get trapped in this cycle where it winds up never getting done, right? Because you put it off, and there's no consequences for doing so. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to punish you. And then you can tell yourself, oh, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have been good anyway. Oh, nobody's going to watch this anyway. Oh, it doesn't even matter. Right. And then it's really easy to just not make anything. And that's incredibly dumb. Okay. Because You're doing this because you love it. You had the idea and you had a schedule for yourself because you were motivated in that moment. So don't let one moment where you're not feeling so motivated ruin all of that, right? Like, remind yourself, like, you owe it to yourself to make your ideas happen. And so pay attention, find a schedule that works best for you. Like me, I work really well evening into night, like 7 p.m. through like midnight, if not like 1 or 2 a.m. That's my time. If I sit down at 7 or 8, I can easily write until it's midnight or 1 o'clock. Like, easily. If I sit down at 2 p.m., I kind of feel like going out, getting some air. I kind of feel like going get an iced tea from Starbucks. I'm not in the mental mode to sit down and do work like that. I want to go out. I want to have a day. And then when I get back, and after I have absorbed all of the experiences of the day, all of the people I have seen, all of the, people I've interacted with, all the places that I have gone, then I can sit down with a little bit of inspiration and I can get a lot of work done. So you have to pay attention to what is that schedule for you. Do you wake up at 6 a.m. and from 6 to 8 a.m. you just feel so energized? Do you go to the gym at 7 and when you get back at 8, between 8 and lunchtime, you're feeling it. You got those endorphins and you feel like, then that's when you should write every day, right? And it could be hard, like when you have a job and when you have school and whatever it is you got going on, to find the time. Like, oh, I write best from 12 to 3, but I have a 9 to 5 job, and I get 30 minutes for lunch. So, to that I would say, like, find the time that you can realistically have to write, try to make it happen, but also pay attention. Like, if you're most motivated at a time that you're busy, like I said before, it doesn't mean that you can't be jotting down ideas. If you're at school, God forbid you're in high school, I can't imagine going back to high school, but if you are, my condolences. Middle school, even more so. But I would I would say, when you're in class, maybe this isn't the best advice to give, but I don't really care. If you're in class, let's say you're in math, and you're supposed to be taking notes on the Pythagorean theorem, but you have an idea for something that you want to write. You got your notebook, you got a pen, write it down. You're taking a test. Teacher, I need a piece of scrap paper to do some work on. Just do some scribbles, figure it out before I put it on the actual test. Write down your ideas. Like, find that time to do that. Teacher, I gotta go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom, write your ideas on your phone, You owe it to yourself, So you gotta be disciplined and you gotta be willing to do whatever it takes. Otherwise, it's just gonna take a really long time, And it shouldn't, because I guarantee that you have a terrific idea. And if you love it and care about it, that's all that you need to know that it's a good idea, is that you want to make it. How many films have been made that critics have trashed on, audiences have trashed on? Maybe eventually look at The Room. The Room is a cult classic. The Room has physical screenings in New York City that Tommy Wiseau goes to, and people are throwing spoons. Like, a film that's not even on paper a good film can still have such an impact, because you know what? Tommy loved that film. He still loves his film. He still believes it's good. It doesn't matter who says it isn't. He is always gonna say that he made a really great film and that he was a terrific actor in it. And you know what? Credit to him. Because it takes a lot of balls. It takes a lot of guts to be like, everyone's telling me that this thing that I love isn't good. I'm going to say that I like it anyway. It's the same way with like guilty pleasure TV shows. You know what? I'll be the first one to say it. I like Love Island. I'm a man and I love Love Island. Now, did I get introduced to Love Island by my girlfriend? Yes. But to be fair, she didn't ask me to watch it. I just saw her watching it and I was like, I'm kind of into this drama. I'm kind of into this, you know, she's so mad about pancakes. Like, why is she so mad? You know, like, I'm into it. I want to know why. Like, why is she getting on his case for nothing? Well, you know, you know, and so I got into it, and it's a show that, like, you know, it's such a dumb show, and it's a little embarrassing, but I'll say loud and proud, I love Love Island. Made me happy to watch it, you know, and so it doesn't matter how many people might judge you for it or might tell you that your idea doesn't work or that you made the film and it wasn't good. Who cares? Make the film for you. If you believe in it, make it. Make it. How many great filmmakers? Harrison Ford was not a successful actor until what, his 40s? I believe. You know, like, how many famous people, and look beyond film, how many famous poets, how many famous painters got absolutely, you know, spat on and got told that they were nothing and that their work was bad until one person saw it and they saw in that work what the artist themselves saw. Because all it takes is one person. When you're applying to jobs, you're going to apply to 100 jobs, you're probably going to hear back from 1 or 2. But you would have heard back from 0 if you only applied to 50 or 30 or 20, you know, even 60. Like, you have to present yourself, as scary and vulnerable as it is. You have to present yourself to a very large pool of people that are going to say no to you, of people that are not going to like what you made. And you have to do that and endure all of those no's and all of that negativity for that one person to say, I liked it too. I see what you were trying to do and I liked it. And now I want you to make another film, you know, or I want to buy this film from you. Whatever it is, right? So, you know, that was a bit of a tangent, but really it just comes down to, if you like your idea, then you owe it to yourself to see it through. So write down your ideas whenever you can. Be selfish about it. Oh, I'm at work. I'm getting paid. I shouldn't be on the clock writing out my script. Who cares? Who cares? You spend all day. You spend 9 to 5 every day during the week, or whatever your schedule and situation is, working to build somebody else's vision and brand. Right? If you're not a business owner yourself, then you spend all your time working to build up what somebody else's vision is. You owe it to yourself to build up your own vision too. So be disciplined, be selfish, and just make it happen, you know? And all that leads up to actually putting this into a script format, right? And so let's get a little bit more on track here. Let's get back on track. Let's reel ourselves in. I know I got a little heated there. I'm sorry. But the first draft, okay? I had a professor. Let's say that there's 3 drafts of a film. A professor of mine once said, get it done, get it good, get it great. Okay, your goal at first is not to get it great. That's what the third draft is for. Your goal at first is not to get it good. That's what your second draft is for. Your goal at first is just to get it done, meaning get something on the page. Just get to the end so that you can call it as script. Put all your ideas from your outline. Write your whole script. Just vomit it out. As you're writing, if you're like, oh, this is not working the way I thought it would, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Get it on the page. Get it done. Because it's hard to edit something when you don't have an actual thing. Right? How do you edit a script when it's not a script yet? You can't edit a scene here when the scene, you know, where the payoff for that scene 20 pages later isn't written yet. Just get everything on the page. It's typically called a vomit draft for a good reason. Get it on the page. Now you go back after that, and now this is your second draft. So now you're going to fill in some holes that you might have had. You're going to repair some cracks that just didn't work the way you wanted it to. You're going to, you know, really identify the parts of the script that that didn't work and that you have to fix. And you're going to rewrite a lot, right? Now, throughout this whole process of actually writing the script, this is the only thing I'll say you need to do, and it's to follow industry standard screenplay formatting. And there's no excuse not to. There's so many softwares nowadays. Like, it's not like the old days where they were on typewriters and they had to memorize the margins and change it on the fly themselves. Like, you have Final Draft, you have Cell Text, you have like all of these programs that will automatically format your script the way that you need it to be. So there's no excuse. A lot of these, I have the same Final Draft subscription that I got for free in film school. It's kind of like that, those shirts. It's like I went to, Mars, and the only thing I got was this crappy t-shirt. It's like, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I went that hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt for film school, and all I got was this $50 Final Draft subscription. But hey, at least you got it, right? So I still use it. So you don't have to pay every year. It's a one-time thing. I got it for free. I still use it today. 3 to 4, 5 new versions of Final Draft have come out since. I don't care. There's no reason to upgrade. So I just keep it. So just spend the money now. Just get something cheap. Celtx, CELTX, I believe has a free version that you can even check out. And, all you got to do is know when to indent. Like, your slug lines at the top. Then you have your action. Then the dialogue's in the middle. Like, you just press tab. So all you do is you press tab when you got to go to the next thing. Enter, tab. You got to do a slug line, enter twice. Now you're in a slug line. Enter again, you write your action, enter, tab. Now you're in the characters. Like, it's so easy. There's no excuse not to do it. And the reason it is important is because even if you're not going to pitch the script, well, let's say you are, you will get laughed out of the room because they will think that you're an amateur if you do not follow formatting. So if you want somebody to take you seriously, you have to play the game a little bit. You have to give in a little bit. You have to learn these things. But even if you're not going to do that, if you're going to say, screw it, I'm going to make this film myself. Well, you still have a crew and a cast in your film, even if it's one actor and a DP. Let's say you're filming it yourself, but probably you're still going to have actors, right? At least one. There's going to be, most likely, at least one other person, no matter how small your film is, there will probably be one other person besides yourself. I will say, if you're doing a project where it is truly just you, sure, it doesn't matter. Sure. I just don't think that's a lot of cases. Maybe with like a short film, or you're doing like a cheesy voiceover yourself, and then you're just doing like shots of nature. Like, I don't know. But if you're writing a film, for the most part, there's going to be at least some other people involved in making it happen. And it's important to follow formatting so that they know what you're talking about. Your actor has to be able to know how to read the script. If his lines are all the way to the left hand of the margin of the page, like that's going to confuse them. Like, it needs to be in the middle where it's supposed to be. If your slug lines are not in all capital letters, it's going to be an absolute headache to figure out, where the last scene ends and the next one begins. Like, these moments, like, are very, these rules are very important to follow, so that even if you're not selling it, just the other people making it know what you're trying to say. They can read it easily. It's just, and then they're going to have confidence in you as a director, producer, whatever role you take on. They're going to have the confidence, that you know what you're doing. But if you can't even format right when there are programs to do it for you automatically, how in the hell are you going to do anything else right? Like, that's what's going to go through their heads. Now, you'll be capable of doing other things, even if you didn't format it correctly, but you got to prove that to people, right? If they're going to even agree to work on your film in the first place. So follow those rules, familiarize yourself with, it's very basic. It'll take you like an hour tops before you it's just muscle memory, so that's really important. And during this stage, you're polishing, right? Okay. Now, it's probably a good idea before you get it great and finish your film. Or maybe it's during this third draft, you fix it. you have to now, at some point, I know you've been trying to avoid it, but you gotta pass it off for some feedback. You need feedback. Okay? It really is a big deal. Now, it's the most vulnerable feeling. Feels like you're those dreams where, like, you go to school completely in your underwear, and, like, for some reason you didn't notice until you're already sitting down, and now you have to, like, figure out a way that no one sees you, like, naked. Like, it's completely stupid, but that's how it feels, right? It feels, like, so vulnerable. And, like, what if they don't like it? But like I said before, you know, stay true to yourself, right? If you like it, then have confidence in it. Now, liking it, though, there's a fine line between, nah, screw you. You don't like that part? Well, I like that part. I'm going to keep it. Like, you can't get too stubborn. So, like, there's a lot of things that feel contradictory. It's like, have that confidence and, like, do what you believe in, even if other people don't. But then also, if a lot of people are telling you the same thing doesn't work, it's probably a good idea to massage it a little bit, right? Like, you have to have a little bit of wiggle room. If somebody is telling you, like, this whole script, the whole premise of this script is dumb and it doesn't work and I don't like it, then maybe it's just not for them, right? Ignore that. But if someone's like, yo, I loved this, but this one scene really confused me, and then the next person says it, and the next person says it, and the next person says it, then at that point, what you have in front of you is an opportunity that you have to realize the importance of. You have an audience member, several of them in front of you, telling you what they won't like about your film when you make it. And at that point, if you ignore them and make the film and people are not going to like this one part, you have no one to blame but yourself. You know, people told you this part wasn't going to work and you did it anyway out of stubbornness. So, you know, you have to know how to draw that line between, like, this just isn't for this person. Like, oh, this person didn't like it, but they don't like these types of films, you know, so it's not for them. Or this person likes it and they should like it, and they're saying that this part doesn't work. It probably means that there's something structurally wrong. And so it's important to entertain all that feedback. Like, if I had gotten more feedback and actually listened, because I used to be that stubborn guy. I still am. But I used to be really bad. I used to, like, when someone would, you know, like a teacher gave me a critique, I almost felt like I had to defend it. Like, I had to defend myself. I was in, like, battle mode. And I was like, oh, they're coming at me. They're attacking what I did. Now I have to protect myself. I have to defend myself. I have to explain why I did it like that. And that's pretty dumb, right? You know, like, that's pretty stupid. You don't need to, you know, feel like you're in a fight. Like, this is someone who's helping you. This is someone who took the time to read what you made. And they're giving you their honest opinions, and they're seeing it from a lens that's unbiased. Like, you are so close to your own work that you can't see the flaw. I cannot watch my film anymore, Gingerbread Kids. I can't watch it with honest eyes. All I see, you know, are things that I wish I did differently, and even if there aren't anything there that I wanted to do differently, I'll make stuff up in my head. I'm like, yeah, I could have done that differently. And I never thought about it before, but now all of a sudden it's bothering me. Like, I've watched it so many times that I can't watch it and tell you if it's good or not anymore, you know? And you will get to that point with your script. And so you need that unbiased, those fresh, unbiased eyes. And if people are telling you that there's something structurally wrong, you know, and it's not coming from a place of, oh, I just don't like the film. It's coming from a place of, I like it, but this isn't working. Then you owe it to yourself, to all the other people working on your film, you know, to fix it, to give the film its best shot once it's made. It doesn't mean that you're abandoning your whole plan for the film. It just means that you're making it stronger. You're making your idea better, right? So don't argue with that advice. You know, you don't have to take every piece of advice, but just be open. Get the feedback, write it down, don't sit across from somebody giving you feedback and just tell them all the ways that they're wrong. Like, it's really rude, to do that. Just write them down. If you don't want to follow a piece of advice, don't follow it later. But take it in, get the advice, be appreciative of what they are doing for you, and then later you can take what you want and leave what you don't. There's plenty of hills that you can die on, but there's some that just aren't really worth it, right? And this kind of leads to, what's known as killing your darlings, right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You might have a scene that you think is so good and people just don't F with it. And maybe it is a great scene, but maybe after you wrote the whole... So let me give you an example. I think this will be easier to understand than me explaining it. In my film, I always had this idea for some reason that it would open. This brother and sister on the run. I wanted them to be walking into a gas station. I wanted a teenager to walk in with a big suitcase, rolling it around. And as he's going through the aisles, this little tiny hand reaches out of a hole in the suitcase and is pulling snacks off of the shelves and shoving it inside. And then, he turns around, maybe he buys one thing, maybe he buys nothing, and he leaves. And it's like a little mini heist. He hid his sister in the suitcase, and they went in and they stole a bunch of snacks covertly, and because they don't have money and they don't have food, and this is what they had to do to survive. I just thought visually it was strong. But by the time that I wrote all the rest of the film, that scene belonged nowhere. It had no place in the film. And I tried so hard to make it work because I loved it. But I had to be honest with myself and say, listen, if I put this in, maybe the scene will still look cool, but it's not going to make sense coming from the previous scene and leading into the next one. And it's just going to, instead of being this cool thing that people remember your film for a positive reason, people are going to remember your film for that because of the negative reason that it had, right? Like, they're not going to remember it because it was great. They're going to remember it because it was weird and it didn't belong. And so there are going to be those instances where, whether it's a good scene that just doesn't fit with the rest of the plot, where maybe the scene you just thought was good and it's just not working. Like, if it's not working, it's not working. So you just can't get too attached. Acknowledge that, frame it to yourself. Like, I love this idea, but I have to take it out to make the film stronger. That's how you have to frame it to yourself. The film will be better without this. This will make the film worse. But what you can do is write that idea down and save it for another film. That's the beauty of all this. You're going to write another movie, right? Maybe down the line, maybe I'm writing something dystopian and apocalyptic and, everybody's fighting for themselves. And this is how this person goes in and steals food and gets food for himself. He hides his little sister and she steals the food. Like, whatever. Like, I can use that later. It didn't have to be for this film, So just don't get too attached. If you love an idea, make it work for something else. Maybe spitball around that specific idea, and maybe that will generate a whole new story for a whole new film, Don't act like you have to throw it away. Don't trash it. Recycle it. Put in the recycling bin. Put in the blue bin. So, just let the characters and the plot guide you. Listen to your muse. And just, pay attention to what's working and what's not, and follow your instinct and get that feedback and keep iterating on that first draft, that second draft. Now you're in a third draft. If you need another draft, go for another draft and just keep iterating until you have the strongest piece that you can. And at that point, you are ready to film. But knowing when that point comes is also difficult because of one word that I like to consider a fake word, which is perfection. Maybe you're blessed and you don't suffer from this condition, but I certainly do. And I bet a lot of you do who are listening to this. Perfection is your enemy. Like, if you're, I got so focused on making my script perfect. That's why it took me 6 to 7 years. Okay, I'm not sitting here like I followed all these rules while I wrote the film. No, this is what I learned from writing my first film and making it. I learned that these things are important because at times I didn't pay attention to them, and it negatively impacted me and the film. Not all of them. Some of these things I knew from the get-go and I was good about, but I was very stubborn with feedback. I'm not perfect. I was very stubborn with feedback. People would tell me what wasn't working, what was working. I would say, no, it works. No, it's good. It's like, well, it's really not, And eventually, I came to terms with that. The difference is it took me a year of writing and rewriting to get to that point where I could have had it immediately, months sooner, if I just changed it when I got the feedback. But I wasn't ready to listen. So you always have to be open to listening, and you have to get rid of the idea that your script is going to be perfect, because what is perfect? And it sounds like a corny question, but it's really a legitimate question. Like, can you actually say what perfect is? Because I don't really know. I'll be honest with you. If I had to define it, it's like, okay, something without flaws. But like, what is that? Like, a flat surface isn't even flat. Under a microscope, there's still divots and holes in it. Like, nothing is truly perfect. Nothing is without a flaw. That white wall in front of you, might be stained. That probably isn't even white. That's not eggshell white. That's milk white, That's half and half white. Even your wall isn't the white that it was supposed to be. Like, nothing is truly perfect. There's always and find the beauty in those flaws, and the beauty in that nothing is perfect, right? Take something that like the Matrix. There's that scene in the Matrix where they are opening the doorknob, and they wanted a shot really close on the doorknob, but they couldn't get it. Nowadays, you could probably VFX it out easier, but I guess back then, maybe they didn't have the budget for it or something, but the camera was in the shot, and it was unavoidable. So, I forget who was actually in the scene, but they had a coat and a tie on. And so they put a coat and a matching tie pattern on the camera so that it flowed from the actor's coat and tie, flowed and lined up with the coat and tie hiding the camera. And in the reflection, it's pretty damn obvious. But on your first time watching it, you might not even think about it. And technically that's a flaw, but it was worth it because they were able to get a really, really cool looking shot. And that DP or director, whoever pushed for it, they wanted that shot, and they got it. And it came with a little bit of what you might call an imperfection. But if the alternative is a boring shot, I say it's worth it. Have a little imperfection. Have a little character. That gives that film character. You're watching that scene, you're like, you see that in the reflection of the doorknob, you're like, I respect that. I like that. This feels like art. This isn't just film is art. Film is a business, yes. But you're not making egg cartons. You're not making reams of paper. You're making a film. You're making art. It's going to be messy. It's going to be sloppy in some ways. But make it yours and make it the way that you want to. Don't get bogged down by, oh, I really like this. I just feel like it's not perfect. If there's something that you want to add to it, great, but don't get bogged down by it. Don't be on the set of The Matrix and get a boring shot as opposed to an interesting shot because the interesting shot technically had something flawed about it. But it was more interesting, and isn't that what film is about? Isn't it supposed to look interesting? So don't get bogged down by that perfection because it will make you bland. And it will make you go crazy, and you will be running in circles trying to make this script perfect like I was. when at a certain point you have to look at it and be like, I believe in this, I like this, I got feedback and other people like it, you know, you have to recognize that at a certain point, like I said before, you're not looking at it with unbiased eyes. You know, you're looking for flaws, and if you look hard enough, you will find some. But what I did, and what I still do, is I think back to the moment when I finished the script, and I think back to the moment that I first watched the finished cut of the film, and I remember how I felt about it then, and I remember how much I loved both. And I trust myself. And I say, right now, I can look at this and I see flaws. But I trust that when I looked at it the first time and I loved it, I trust my judgment then, because I was not biased yet. I watched it with fresh eyes and I saw it for what it was. And so, you know, don't focus on, you know, don't drive yourself in circles focusing on like if you consider perfection to where you're not going to have anything negative to say, you're never getting that. I'll tell you that right now. You're always going to have something negative to say. I guarantee you, Tommy Wiseau can admit to some negative aspects of the room. Guarantee you, no matter how much you believe in your film, there will be things that bother you personally. So don't wait for that moment to come. As soon as you read it and you believe in it, give yourself permission to make it happen. And if you ever start doubting it down the road and you just feel like you're going crazy, think back to the moment when you first finished it and remember how it made you feel. And try to look at it and see, okay, am I just going crazy? I loved this back when I wrote it. I loved this when I first filmed it. You know, and recognize, and a lot of times you will find it's just you being hard on yourself. So to get a script done, you have to just give yourself permission to finish it when you know in your heart of hearts that it is good, right? And that it is great. And that leads me to making it happen, right? That's what you do when you finish a script. Now you have it. You followed all the steps I just laid out. And now you have a script that is ready to be filmed. How do you do that? And I'm going to make a lot of episodes of this podcast. Right? This is an ongoing show. And I'm going to touch on that in many of them. But for now, what I will say is that there's two ways that you could go. One is you can pitch it. You can bring it to a producer and you can many producers, spoiler alert. And you can try to get someone to give you funding. You can try to do your research and try to learn about grants and how you can get money and try to, you know, be a producer in that regard yourself. Or you can just make it happen yourself without worrying about any of that, right? You can just say, I have nothing. I have no money. I have no one in my life that has a lot of money, you know, and I don't care. You know, I don't know how to get a grant. I don't care. I'm going to make the film. I'm going to find a way and I'm going to make it. That's what I did. So, like I said, I'm going to have a lot of videos about this. But don't be intimidated, right? Because your work deserves to exist. You deserve to make it happen. And if I can, then you can, right? Because I had nothing. I had as nothing can get. I had nothing. And my script is not a one location script. It's ambitious for having nothing, let me tell you. And it won at the oldest indie film festival in the world. And it got a distribution offer the first day that we showed it. Now, we did not pursue that offer. I will have videos, you know, where I kind of touch on that experience. We did turn that offer down. But it led to many other great experiences with the film, right? And we don't regret it. But we made all that happen. We got to a distribution offer because we just believed in ourselves. And so all that being said, you know, it can be scary to think about how you're going to make this film a film. Like, okay, I have a script, but how am I going to film this? How am I going to do all this? Take a breath. Take a breath. Hold my hand. I got you. Okay. Gonna have many episodes where we dive into that, and I will show you how it's not as scary as it feels. Now, one last point, and this is the most important thing to take away from this episode. Before you send your script for feedback, before you give it to a producer, before you approach anybody, before you share your script with anybody, okay? It could be your professor. I don't care. Get it copyrighted and register it with the WGA before you show it to them. Because people will steal your ideas. It will happen. Okay? I've heard firsthand stories from people who it has personally happened to. And those are not easy lawsuits to win. Especially if it's not copywritten. Yes, you can email someone a script and you can write it in the email, hey, this is my idea, blah, blah, blah. And yes, there's technically then proof that on this day and this time, you sent them this original idea, and then at a later date and time, they started working on it, and it's a copy of your idea. Like, there is that type of paper trail, but it's not enough. It's really not. Protect your work. Protect it. Take this seriously. I'll have links in the description for where you can register for copyright with the U.S. government if you're in the United States, and where you can register with the WGA. Now, the WGA is not a copyright. It does not give you the protections of a copyright. It's important to do both, but if you're only going to do one, do the copyright. The WGA, it's been a while. I want to say it was only like $40 at most. Like, it was pretty cheap. And a copyright was only like maybe $125 or something. Those prices could have changed, and I also might be remembering it wrong, but they're not that expensive when you consider the protections that it's giving you, especially look down the line. If you want this film to get distributed, then you're going to need to show that you own it. You're going to need to show that you own this script. Because to get distribution, you need what's called E&O insurance, errors and omissions. And to get that insurance, you need to prove that you own, that you have a clear title for the film, right? It's like a car. Your car title, is it clean, or has it been in a wreck? Is it salvage? Like whatever. I don't know that much about cars, but it's the same thing. Do you own this? Do you have the copyright for the script? Do you own the cinematography in it? Like, you're going to have to prove all of that. So getting it done, getting it made is one thing, but prepare yourself for the future and for what your goals and aspirations are with this film, right? So copyright it now, because you'll have to have it done at some point. You might as well have it done before someone else steals it from you, right? So, again, I'll have links in the description. It's really important to do both of those. If there's two things to take away from this episode, it's follow industry standard screenplay formatting and copyright and register with the WGA your script. Those two things are invaluable, and you need to do them. So, I really hope that I was able to give you some insights on how film scripts are developed. Hope I was able to give you some guidance on how to write one yourself. And if you have any tips of your own, please start a conversation in the comments. And there's a piece of advice a professor gave to my girlfriend, who she passed down to me. And I want to leave you with this, that you should always remember, nobody knows anything. Have a good day, and I will see you next time.